The group chat with Tara Thomas and Amanda Goodman of Faith and Four-Letter Words.
Happy Monday, better late than never. Good morning, I'm Tara Thomas, and I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I had planned to be live right at 7, and my husband didn't feed the dogs, which is fine. Sometimes I feed them, but this morning they were very hungry. So then I thought, well, I'm going to have to take time to feed the dogs. So hope you had a great weekend. If you've been following our conversations here at the group chat and online, you know that Amanda Goodman's daughter was playing Saturday for a state championship. And what a weekend for her family, because not only did they end up going into overtime, and then penalty kicks were the deciding factor, and Gia kicked the first penalty kick, Amanda's daughter, successfully. And then Hudson ended up beating Denver on penalty kick success. And that is the first time out of the last 6 times the teams have played where Hudson prevailed. So Denver, it was its third time for the Denver girls to be in the state championship game. And then Hudson, they were going back to state for the 4th year in a row, but had yet to secure a title. So Saturday, that was so exciting. And I was watching it on the live stream on YouTube, which was so fun to watch. And they had even a lightning delay. So talk about crazy. Their semifinal games had been moved to Friday. They were so tired because they had to play so much soccer Friday. Both of the teams had long games Friday. And then when they met in the state final matchup, it was earlier on Saturday than had planned because of also this potential for bad weather. So when they had to play earlier, they were even more tired. And then there was the lightning delay, which probably gave everybody a chance to get their second win. But it was very exciting to watch. And so we're so happy for Gia and their family. And I'm soloing again because Amanda is on federal jury duty. So she had to report this morning to Cedar Rapids if you've ever been called up for jury duty. Funny that neither my husband nor I have been called for jury duty forever. And then my husband just got called for local jury duty, so in Blackhawk County in July, and now Amanda's going down for a federal stint. So we'll see if they pick her. I'm guessing with her higher profile reputation, et cetera, that she probably won't get seated on a jury because she's very much engaged in a lot of, stories and situations that do face the courts or legal wrangling, as you know. So I hope you had a good weekend. It's been really bizarre weather-wise. Of course, our spring just poured into a very severe weather like summer, and over the weekend it was hot, and then it was windy, and then it was chilly, and then it was rainy if you were on the other side of the state. So I've just kind of given up at looking at the forecast because I feel like it's kind of depressing. But today I did see that it's supposed to be mild but still warmer, so we'll see, because I'm wearing this sweater. Since I was so cold yesterday, I've been on the graduation party circuit, as have many of you. My son is going into his senior year of high school. So many of his friends are graduating or did graduate, and now we're going to their parties. So he and I went to 2 parties yesterday. And so the one thing that I have talked to Amanda about that we both agree is all of the photos that people display, even though it's fun and it looks good and it's neat because you as the mom think, every photo is so cute, do people really look at all of the photos? And so that's kind of been our revelation, is do we need to curate and find and display 150 or 200 photos? Probably not, because not everyone's going to take the time to look at them. And then you have to decide, do you want to do all their awards or their uniforms or all the things? And so now, a year out, because I'm always kind of thinking ahead and trying to be proactive, I decided that during this time in the summer when I will have some downtime potentially, I'm going to look through all the old memorabilia that I've saved from my son's years and curate some of it for said display and party that's a year away. And the reason that I think I will do that is because then it will give me an opportunity to organize some more of what we have in this big basement storage room. And there's way too much stuff. But as you know, there are things that you don't want to part with. So I do have my saxophone from when I played in band in middle school and high school. I played the saxophone fifth through eighth grades, and then actually 2 years in high school, I think ninth and 10th grades. And then by my junior year, I just decided, this was back when you could do it all. You could do sports, drama, and be in the band. And today, if you're in a bigger school, that's almost impossible because band is like a sport. It's like a full-time job, and they have very early morning practices. And so then it's hard if you have sports seasons overlapping with marching band and all the other commitments. So I was able to do it. I was volleyball, not great, and then very much involved in drama and speech and a little bit of debate. And then I was able to play the saxophone, at least for half of my high school years. Well, what's crazy, in middle school, the company that rented the instruments to students, they went bankrupt. So when they went bankrupt, we got to keep our instruments unexpectedly. And my saxophone was newer. It was very, very nice. So I have kept it all these years and dragged it around from place to place as I've moved in hopes of someday having a child or grandchild that might use it. But nowadays, if you're more transient, as am I, I'm not probably going to take that saxophone with me all over wherever my life, leads me. And so I was thinking I need to probably sell that saxophone on Facebook Marketplace because it's just one more thing to hang on to. Right now, I do have my wedding dress and my mom's wedding dress, definitely keeping those. And they're just very special things that I would not get rid of and nor sell. But something like a saxophone would be, I'm not like quite as emotionally attached to it. And I haven't played it in years, but I was in the jazz band in high school. And then after I quit, after 10th grade, my 11th grade year, they went to Mardi Gras. So I missed out on the class band trip to Mardi Gras. But the reason that I didn't do band junior and senior year is because then I was able to focus on, other things like Key Club and some other clubs and groups I was a part of. So I hope you had a great weekend and you're enjoying, the start of summer. It's very, very hot in the southwest part of our state, or our country rather, where my daughter is. So she's in Tucson. She'll be home for the month of July, but right now they're easily getting, temps over 100. And everybody always says, oh, I couldn't do it. It's so hot. But honestly, I would enjoy that in contrast to like yesterday coming in and out of these grad parties. I was cold. I was wearing a short sleeve summer dress, but I'm not normal. I always tend to be very cold, and I've heard that's going to change. But Amanda and I recently talked about how someone told me that even though the stereotype and the assumption is women going through perimenopause or ultimately menopause are always having hot flashes and always overheated, my one friend who's always cold all the time, who's my age, she said that sometimes the opposite can happen. It can be that you're colder when you're going through menopause. And so I think I'm definitely falling on that side of the fence, because I was freezing in our house the other day and my husband was like, well, the thermostat is set at like 72. So that's not low by any means. I mean, I know I've talked to some people and they'll have their thermostat this time of year set in the 60s. And that would be, I would have to wear a coat, I think, to get through living in my own home. But I always say to my husband, I'm fine, whatever you want to set it at. So I don't even touch it. But I do complain a lot that I'm cold. And then he's always out working in the yard and doing all the things. And so he tends to be obviously warmer than me, who's like home and sitting and not, I'm walking around and doing stuff inside the house, but not a big outdoor exterior maintenance person. I do deadhead the plants that we have, the pots that go across the front of the house. And I was pleasantly surprised. I went out there yesterday to deadhead and they were doing great. Not a lot of dead leaves. And it's just been with some of this rain, the plants are thriving. And then my husband fertilizes the pots weekly. And then he's very into striping the lawn. So that's kind of his trademark. We have a striping kit that attaches to the back of his push mower. So the lawn is rolled with one row one way and then the next row the opposite way. And then that creates this effect like a carpet where you wipe your hand on it, where it's very pronounced stripes, wide stripes all across the lawn. So I should actually show all of you a picture of it because it's pretty entertaining to see. And we've had reports that you can see the stripes from the satellite images on Google Maps. And we only know this because some people have told us, like, did you know you can see the stripes in your husband's lawn? So it's pretty funny. Let me pull up our Faith in 4-Letter Words page. If you're just joining us, Amanda is off today. She's on federal jury duty. So we've been apart now for over a week. Last week, I was able to solo on Monday because she had to head to a state soccer game and they decorated the bus and all the things. And then on Wednesday, she tried to go live from her house and she was having issues getting online and technical difficulties and couldn't go live. So then we were back together Friday potentially, but then the state game was rescheduled to Friday. So I soloed on Friday as well. So if you're like, oh, we're sick of hearing from Tara and she's not as exciting, good news is we should both be back together co-anchoring on Wednesday morning. Okay, let me pull up and see if we have any comments that I can share. Thank you, Patrice. Good morning, beautiful Tara. Thank you from Dar and Mary, and Anita is also watching with Brandy and quite a few other people. So good morning to all of you lovely ladies, and thank you for joining us. So if you are following some of the sports trends or sports national and international stories, then of course you know that it was a huge weekend for Knicks fans because the Knicks secured the series and won the crown, and they are the NBA champions against the San Antonio Spurs. The series ended up being 4-1, which was shocking because the Spurs were very talented, young group, but very talented. So my son is a huge NBA fan. And if you have children who play video games, then a lot of your sons probably play 2K, which is the NBA version of Madden. So they have their annual new version of NBA 2K. And it is a crazy promotional way that the NBA gets young children to get attached to and to know all of the players who play professional basketball in the United States. So my son knows all the players, knows all the teams. And since he was very, very young, he's been a huge fan of Oklahoma City. And the Thunder are the sort of second version of the Supersonics. So years ago, Seattle had its own NBA team called the Seattle Supersonics. Very storied history. And when the team decided to relocate to Oklahoma City, a lot of Sonics fans hated the team and never forgave them. So they hate the Thunder. My son and other people are in the camp of, no, I like the Thunder because they used to be the Supersonics. So we've always supported the Thunder because of our son's passion. I, growing up, was a Chicago Bulls fan, and it was a time to live in Illinois, right, with the Bulls because Jordan and all the Scottie Pippen and all the incredible achievements of those teams back in my days growing up with the Bulls. I was naturally a Bulls fan. Well, fast forward to the last few years with my son, and I'm a huge OKC fan. And there is a player who's like their star, their MVP, Shea, on the Oklahoma City Thunder. And Shea is so talented. He's from Canada. His parents were both, I think, professional athletes. So my son really likes him and Chet and a lot of the other players. I'm forgetting some of their last names. I actually don't know them on a first name basis, but I follow them too. So OKC lost in their series to San Antonio, and that's how San Antonio then landed in the championship series against the Knicks. So I was kind of love-hate with the Spurs since they knocked OKC out. But the Knicks, I'm not a fan of necessarily, but they did. I mean, they not only deserved to win in the end because I think they were more mature, better coaching, but the Spurs blew it. I mean, they had huge leads at one point, blew it, and then there were just some crazy last second plays. So the Spurs ended up losing at home to the Knicks on Saturday night, and that is the first time the Knicks have secured a championship since 1973, which I did not know this, and I was surprised because the way Spike Lee and Timothy Chalamet and the way these athletes or these celebrities are so in love with the Knicks, I guess I just assumed they had been more successful in the last few decades. I didn't realize that this was such a coveted thing to win a championship because they had had a drought since 1973 of securing a championship. So, of course, World Cup soccer is hot and very much happening across the world. And it's really cool if you've been following on X or Twitter, there are all these Europeans who are getting tons of traction because they're discovering all these things about our country that they, didn't realize were a thing, like Buc-ee's, which is that huge gas station and superstore. If you've ever been in the South and you know about Buc-ee's. So this guy named Freddie from Germany he's got over almost 600,000 followers now. He's like tripled his followers because he's been just so mesmerized by all the sights of the American South. And he's been driving from city to city and documenting all of his finds. And the latest thing is he's in Houston, and professional football player JJ Watt, not football, soccer, American football, JJ Watt, he paid for this Freddie guy to stay in this really nice hotel in Houston. And then the Houston Rockets sent him merch. And then he had a huge thing of cupcakes from this bakery in Houston called Crave. So what a great way for these brands and people to capitalize on all of the interest that this gentleman has generated by being just excited to be in the States. And they said, and this is sad, some of these Europeans, the only news they hear from the States is, anti-Trump, pro-gun, that we're all pro-gun, and about all the school shootings and about all the violence. And so their perception is very skewed, as is many, that's a vice versa situation as well, where we probably have a skewed image of some of the European countries because of our limited exposure through our media lens. But they said they just pictured this was like the wild, wild west here, where we all have guns and we're all shooting each other. And so it is kind of humorous when you think about how people have completely misrepresented our country to international audiences. And so when they come here and they recognize, oh, wow, it's actually a very safe, affordable place to live in many pockets of more rural America, in contrast to the big cities, I think it's like a shock to these people. And then what we like to say, of course, in Iowa is, well, that's good because we love that we have no traffic and we don't want people to move here, right? So, I mean, in some ways, you're happy that you protect your good thing while you have it, and you don't really want people to invade or impose on it. And so that's what has happened in like Seattle. So growing up, my husband would go to Seattle and had family there for years because he's from the Yakima Valley in Washington. And Seattle used to be just more of a small, big city with kind of a smaller town feel. And then once people discovered that it is, I think, probably the most beautiful city in our country on a clear day, as far as with the mountains and the ocean and everything in the backdrop, I think Washington, D.C. is the most unique architecturally, and then probably Chicago as well. And that's what the European gentleman discovered. He said the Chicago architecture was amazing. And they have a really cool boat tour you can do where you can check out all the hidden secrets about the architecture. It's really well worth it. I did that with my two friends when we went on a little girls' trip to Chicago. But I digress. Anyway, so in Seattle, it's such a very landlocked situation where, they have the ocean on one side and then they have a river on the opposite side. So it's kind of like a little island, which is why you saw in Sleepless in Seattle, Tom Hanks and his son lived on a houseboat because they have a lot of people who live on houseboats and the climate is mild there. So what's crazy is all these people discovered, wow, this is an incredible place. And they moved up from like the smog of California and some of the overpopulation of California. So Seattle, then the cost of living is now off the charts and they are overpopulated. And it's actually crazy that they have completely had to, almost accommodate too many people in such a small area in terms of the dense population. So that's been kind of interesting to see. And I've sort of tracked this since I first moved to the Northwest in 1996. And so from 1996 to 2002, I lived in Washington State. And then from now until, from 2002 to now living in Iowa, I'm very much connected to Washington because that's where my in-laws lived. They've both since passed away. And then my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, well, now my brother-in-law passed away, but then my two stepdaughters, who are now 38 and 36, still live out in Washington State. So it's like a second home for me in addition to my original home of Illinois. And so it's just been somewhat sad to see how it's changed. So my sister-in-law, she was an insurance executive in downtown Seattle for years. And she just loved working there because you could walk outside in the beautiful weather. You could go to Pike Place Market. You could go to, the original Starbucks and do all the things. Well, over time, it's happened to a lot of cities. They've just had an influx of homeless people or situations where people were drug addicted and didn't have stable lives. And so she said it got to the point at the end of her career, she was stepping over people that were, injecting drugs into their arms when she was on her lunch break. And that's how she described sort of the demise of some of the areas of downtown. So she's retired now, but still lives in a suburb it's like the Beverly Hills of Seattle. It's called Bellevue. And she's in this great neighborhood where she lives across the street from the garage where Jeff Bezos started Amazon. So fun fact that we see this garage when we go visit her. Very crazy history on that street and in that community with Bezos starting Amazon in the garage. It's literally right across the street from her house. So another thing that's interesting about Seattle, if you have been to Seattle and you understand the stereotype that everyone in the Midwest thinks is, oh, it rains there all the time. Well, here's the thing. It never pours and they don't have thunderstorms like us. So you're not going to have loud claps of thunder and lightning. You're going to just have a gentle mist. And so when you look at the total rainfall, and you can look this up, I'm not making this up. You look at the total rainfall of Seattle, the annual rainfall, we actually surpass the total rainfall in the Midwest because of our downpours and our torrential rains. And so when you think of like, oh, it's rainy there, you don't need an umbrella and a raincoat like you do here. It's just this light drizzle. It's so much of a drizzle compared to us that you would think, oh, well, I don't even need to really cover up. I mean, versus here where last week it was like, people were shooting a fire hose at our windshield is what it felt like the 2 days that I was driving in it. So that's just the weird thing. Now it is overcast a lot. So they definitely have higher rates of depression there for people who tend to get that seasonal affective disorder where it is dreary, but their temperatures are mild and it's very hilly. So, and mountainous. And so they don't have any crazy snow removal equipment and all the things. And so they're very much like the South, where if they did have an unusual snowfall, they would have to shut down the city because, we're talking very steep, hilly terrain all across that city. But it's a beautiful city. And so that was my honest take on it. But despite what I was saying about how they've had some challenges, with their transient population, it's still very much worth your time to go there. And then if you're there, you might as well hop on a ferry and go to Victoria or Vancouver, British Columbia, because it's just a short ferry ride north. And oh my gosh, Victoria is such a beautiful place. So if you're a fan of flowers and all the things and you're into gardening, you got to go there because they have their, I think it's called the Bouchard Gardens, Bouchard. I'll have to look that spelling up and see if I can tell you more because some of you probably know about it. My mom and dad, yeah, Bouchard. So it's B-U-T chart, and it's French Canadian, so it would be Bouchard, I believe. And Monique can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And those gardens are spectacular because they just have the perfect climate in the Northwest and then in British Columbia in that part of the country to grow incredible plants and flowers and just very lush landscapes. So that's really fun to see in person. And it was funny, my husband and I one weekend, 3-day weekend, we went up to Victoria and I think we went to Vancouver. Actually, I've been there a few times. Vancouver is also a beautiful city. So anyway, what's funny is it was rainy, so we couldn't really walk around and do a lot outside. And so we went into a museum and then it was just like, oh gosh, I forgot, they're Canadian with like British rule. So their museum had like all the history of the royal family and like the British monarchy. And then I was thinking how it's so weird that could have been us had we not had the Revolutionary War and defeated the redcoats, right? But we are not governed by the British royal family or the British colony. So it's actually really interesting. I had forgotten that they're very much still, tied to Great Britain. So also another beautiful city, two beautiful cities that some of you have, visited or know people who live there, San Francisco and San Diego, both beautiful in their own way. And again, San Francisco, same as Seattle. You don't want to go there and leave anything of value in your car. So I know a person, actually, she used to be a morning anchor at KWWL. Her name was Sunny Lane, and she followed me on the morning show, I believe, and was the morning anchor with Chris Carter when I did the evenings. And Sunny had gone on vacation with her husband to San Diego, and she had left a computer on the passenger seat of their rental car, and they got out at the Golden Gate Bridge to go get a photo in the afternoon. So broad daylight, of course, heavily traveled tourist place. And they were gone, she said, a very short time. And when she came back, her car and all the adjacent vehicles had all been broken into, and they had taken her computer and anything of value out of it. And so that is a common refrain you hear from tourists is, oh my gosh, I lost this or this got stolen. You just can't have anything of value anymore outwardly in these big cities, unfortunately, because crime is, yes, rampant is the word I will use. So in the case of Seattle, years ago, it's probably been 5 years ago, our family went to a playoff game, and it was against the Chiefs and the Seahawks, and it was in Seattle at the Seahawks Stadium, which is an incredible stadium, and their stadiums are adjacent. So the Seahawks and the Mariners are right next to each other, kind of like in Kansas City, the Chiefs and the Royals. Their stadiums are close, but they're more spread out in an open area. In Seattle, they're literally like right across the street from one another. And so you can walk between them. So we had parked in a lot where it was very expensive. And I think we paid $80 to park in this lot. And then there were other many surrounding lots where people that had gone to the game had parked. Well, we went back to our hotel, and these fans that had parked in an adjacent lot that was supposedly, being watched. Of course, they have the signs up that they're not responsible for lost or stolen items. And when they got back to their car, they had left their luggage in the back of the car, and somebody had broken the back window and taken all their luggage. So they were driving back from this downtown game to Bellevue, where they were staying at an Embassy Suites. And that's where we talked to them in the lobby. And it was cold. It was in the middle of December that we went to this playoff game, and they had no back window. So they were driving in very, very cold weather with no luggage, a broken out rental car window. And then they said that when they asked somebody or just talked to somebody about like, well, what should we do or who should we call? And they said, don't bother calling the police. They won't even come, because something like that would be small potatoes in a big city. So they don't even care if your car gets broken into. And when you park there, you are parking at your own risk, even though you're paying through the nose to park there. So it was just a valuable lesson and reminder to us that it's not Iowa, right? When we travel in some of these cities. So you just have to be really mindful. And we all look like tourists, right? Because like in Seattle, everybody wears dark colored clothes. And then I'd probably, show up with a white cardigan and they'd be like, okay, clearly she's not local. She's not from here, right? So just very much the perils of traveling, of course, in some of our bigger cities, which is sad because I don't think it's always been this way. But I think bigger cities always have the potential, right, for more challenging situations just because of the dense population, in contrast to here where fewer people and a lot less crime, which is a bonus for us who live here, because it's one thing to visit a place where they have those challenges, but I definitely would not want to constantly be concerned about crime and theft just going to work. And that's what a lot of, people are dealing with in the big cities. All right, well, I've been rambling on. I'm going to post or pull up the comments so I can see. Oh, thank you. Monique said I pronounced it correctly. Merci. Appreciate that. So we have another show scheduled this week. And again, apologies to those of you who were planning to join us at the Fireside Winery in Manchester, or in Marengo rather, last week. We had to cancel and hopefully reschedule the show soon due to the severe weather. So if any of you had all the winds and the extraordinarily crazy rain over the last week in your backyard, then it's been a job. My husband's been out there picking up tons of sticks and leaves. And so all across the state, there were fits and spurts of this severe weather, and it wreaked havoc on the state soccer for Gia and her team. They had to do a lightning delay. They had to move a game. I mean, it was just a lot. So, and of course, baseball, same thing. We had a lot of delays and cancellations. So during that time, when that supercell was forecasted on Tuesday to be over that whole area in and around Marengo, then we just decided, because a lot of our fans or our followers, a lot of our guests that come to the Faith and Four Letter Words in-person shows tend to be middle-aged or older. And so we just don't feel comfortable having people drive in that, especially if you got to the venue and then the severe weather hit. And then, where are we going to safely evacuate when we have such a large crowd? And then we didn't want people to have to go driving home in very potentially severe conditions. So, we erred on the side of caution, clearly. And that was something that people understood. And so everybody who had purchased a ticket got a refund, or if you want to use that money toward, a future date, then we will let you know when that new date at Fireside Winery gets scheduled. In the meantime, we will be in Reedland this Wednesday, which is only a 30-minute drive south of Waterloo. And this is our third time coming back to the wonderful community of Reedland. So we're excited to be there this Wednesday night, and we would love to have you join us. You can go to faithandfourletterwords.com, and we have tickets available on Wednesday, June 17th. And then the following week, on the 24th, we are planning to be in Monticello, and we will talk to you more about that as the week progresses. So I really wanted to also give a shout out to our sponsors, Conoyer Garden Center and Glasshouse Market on the west side of the state. Thank you for supporting us. And then the Urology Center of Iowa has so many alternatives for, treating women dealing with the bladder issues and the things that happen, especially after we've given birth. So you can check out all these options that are so much more advanced and modernized. I need to pull out my little cheat sheet here. Sorry, I have to adjust my computer to do so. So Urology Center of Iowa, the website is iowauro.com, and it is the Urology Center of Iowa. Urinary urgency and frequency, overactive bladder incontinence, and pelvic organ prolapse. All of these things have treatments today that are not as invasive and that have incredible results, in contrast to, like, what my grandma had to do, which was like the mesh around her bladder, I think. I mean, some of these procedures at the time seemed innovative, but now those would be antiquated compared to what they can do today. So check out iowauro.com for more information. And if you are following the World Cup soccer, then you know that the USA was successful in defeating Paraguay. I think it was 4-1. And so I've seen all these tweets with people saying, is the USA that good, or was the team they played just that bad? And so people are saying, some of the analysts are saying it's the best they've seen the USA men's team play ever. So that's very exciting. So they play Australia this Friday, and I believe they're playing at Lumen Field in Seattle, where the Seahawks play. Fun fact, my family was just out in Seattle because we went there for Easter so that we could visit our grandchild Wrigley when we went out to the Yakima Valley. So when we were in Seattle, we had never done the tour of Lumen Field, even though we've gone to games there. So we did the tour, and it was a lot of fun. And it was a beautiful day, beautiful sunny day. So we got to take some fun photos. And while we were there, so this was in April of this year, Easter weekend, we were able to see how they were transforming the stadium and putting all of the wrap and the branding for FIFA, which is the international organization that's, powering the World Cup competition and the games. So they are changing the look and feel of these stadiums and taking down all of the branding and reference to the home team. So they were covering up all the Seattle Seahawks stuff and putting all FIFA signs and wrap and branding. And so just a crazy transformation. And then, they had to transform these fields so that they were living up to the pitch, as they call it, the conditions that you need for professional soccer. So I think they had to add a lot of dirt to the surface of some of these fields. And then Jerry Jones in Dallas, I know they said that the Cowboys had put a lot of money in to put these special lights, kind of like greenhouse lights, over the grass, the turf, so that it would actually stimulate growth of the grass that they put on the surface for these games. So, I mean, just some fascinating elements, very expensive undertaking for all these US stadiums to be transformed into European level quality fields for these professional soccer games. So this Friday, when the US plays Australia, it's actually an early game. I think it's 2:00 Pacific time. So that game will start here at 4:00. And there are so many people now that are excited about it, and more than ever fans of the World Cup, because so many of the games are happening on US soil. So it was funny. I saw this girl's TikTok over the weekend, and she said that she was laughing about how all these Europeans were talking about all the things, that they're discovering about the United States. And she was honest, and she said, I'm just discovering that we're even playing in it, because she said she didn't even realize the USA had a team that plays in the World Cup, because so many people in the United States are hyper focused on sports like football and basketball, our version of American football. So not a lot of people that necessarily know what's happening with the World Cup. So it's been a great way, I think, to expose a whole new audience to the World Cup, because for people, if you're a soccer fan and you follow those games, then you know that it's among the fastest growing sports in this country, because there are so many people that have come here with ties culturally to countries where soccer, football, as they call it, dominates the sports interest and entertainment. So this is something that was only accelerated here by the show with Jason Sudeikis, Ted Lasso, which Ted Lasso, if you have not seen, what a great series. And it documents a guy from the States, Ted, played by Jason, going overseas to England to coach a professional soccer team there. And so I've gotten to know a little bit more about how the Premier League works and those games through Ted Lasso. And then I have friends like Amanda and my friend Gina, they're big professional soccer fans. So, you learn from your friends and their enjoyment about things like what their pursuits involve. And Amanda said, when I texted her yesterday and said, did you see anything with this the UFC bouts at the White House that Trump hosted last night? And she said, no, every TV in our house only has World Cup games on, because of course her husband Hector he's born in Bolivia, but grew up until his teens in Argentina. So he's a huge professional soccer fan, as are so many kids now in Iowa. So at Waterloo West, they have the United Nations. I mean, they have kids with heritage from all over the world. And so many of these young people are huge professional soccer fans. And so if you talk to them, they have a favorite team. A lot of them like Real Madrid, they love like Messi and some of the other big names, kind of like our version of Michael Jordan. So it's fun just to see that these kids soccer is finally getting its spotlight in the United States. And it's fun then for people like Gia, who've played it her whole life, to be a part of the state tournament and winning that championship. And then it's coinciding, with a time when all of these World Cup games are happening on US soil. So very fun time to be alive and to be part of this if you're a longtime soccer player or fan. I'm going to go to the comments just in case I've missed anything. And again, thank you so much for being a part of the group chat as I solo another show with Amanda being on jury duty. Good morning, Alice. She said, happy morning, morning sunshine girl. I appreciate that. She always has a kind word, and Jan is watching, and a lot of other people. So I appreciate you tuning in. So we have another summer week ahead, as we described earlier, with some nicer temperatures, even milder today than what it was, I think, last week. And that makes me curious. I will look on my weather app. I haven't thus far to kind of project ahead, but it does appear that this whole week is going to be milder temperatures. So lows in the 50s and highs in the low to mid 70s. So if you're like me and you're on the chillier side when it's not in the 80s, unless it's like in the 80s, then you're going to want to grab a cardigan or a sweater jacket as you head out to work or play or whatever you're doing this week. We will be in Reedland on Wednesday, and I have, 4 baseball games I'll be attending. So tonight we're playing Dubuque Senior. Tomorrow we play Waterloo East. And then on Thursday, we play a team from Davenport Central. So they're coming up from the Quad Cities on Thursday. So I'll be, if I'm not at work, I'll be at a baseball field throughout the week. And I wanted to share a Bible verse. This one came up today as the verse of the day on YouVersion, and I thought it was an excellent verse. It's 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8. Most important of all, continue to show deep love for each other, for love covers a multitude of sins. And that is such a great lesson, because so many times we want to react in anger and frustration over all the things that are out of our control, big and small. A lot is out of our control. And so for me, I just try to think, as cheesy as the cliche is, WWJD, what would Jesus do? So I've definitely tried to just respond with love and kindness, even when it always isn't afforded to me. And that's the right thing to do as a Christian, is to just know that you don't have to lie down and take it and be a doormat, but you also don't have to clap back or be combative about every little slight or thing that offends you. And my husband, when I was telling him some story about being annoyed with something yesterday, he said to me, I think sometimes you overthink things, and he's not wrong. And I think a lot of women, we tend to do that, where we overanalyze and critique circumstances where he said he just doesn't really care and it's not that big of a deal. And so he just like moves on. And so I think that's a good lesson for all of us, is just move on and bless and release and just go on about your life and your business, and don't worry about what everyone else is doing, because they're all worried about themselves too, right? You're not thinking about everybody as much as they're thinking about themselves, because that's just how we are as selfish creatures. We're inclined to worry about ourselves a lot more than we probably even recognize. So yes, I will just focus on the man in the mirror and how I can be a better person. And I hope you do the same. Have a great week. I'm happy that it's summertime because, of course, we don't have to deal with snow and ice. And so if you're hot or you're annoyed at the severe weather, just remember that we've been through some rough days in the winter months. And so now this is our time to enjoy a shift in the climate. Have a great Monday. We'll see you right back here on Wednesday.
Thank you for watching the group chat. The show is brought to you by the empowering staff at Urology Center of Iowa, Senoyer Gardens, Azalea Lane Boutique, and Splendor the Medical Spa.